Hey, what's up guys? Nate here. Today in this video, I'm going to talk about the newest acquisition that everyone is talking about, the Salesforce and Slack acquisition. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about that acquisition. But first, guys, I post a video every day about scaling online companies, about marketing, entrepreneurship, and just all the newest and latest updates happening in the online world. So if you like those types of things, make sure that you show that subscribe button some love. All right, let's go ahead and let's jump right into it. So Salesforce is actually a huge company. I got to be honest. Out of all the companies I've been following over the years, Salesforce just wasn't at the top of my list. I've used Salesforce before. It just wasn't something that I'm thinking about on an everyday basis. But they're a massive company. They have over a $200 billion worth. And I heard an interview this morning with Jim Cramer even talking about the idea that they could get up to a $500 billion valuation if they keep investing the same way that they are. So that's just insane. But this year, surpassing $20 billion in annual revenue, they announced on December 1st that they were looking to acquire Slack in a huge deal of $27.7 billion with a B. Huge acquisition, one of the biggest acquisitions in Salesforce history. This is in combination with cash and stock. It equates to about $26.79 per share and about 0.0776 in stock, which comes out to about $45.86 a share, which is much higher than the stock of Slack before the news of the possible acquisition, which was trading at between $25 and $30. And so Salesforce has been trying for some time to get into the enterprise social communication space for their employees, but also for the outside communication, as we see from their attempt at their software called Chatter, which ultimately fell flat on its face. Sorry, Salesforce, but Chatter just never took off. But what's interesting to note is about 90% of Slack's enterprise customers are also using Salesforce. And so that actually works perfectly as a partnership, since so many of the enterprise people on Slack are already using Salesforce. It gives Salesforce a perfect entry into the communication space to be able to help them on that side. So CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benioff, said that this is a match made in heaven. Together, Salesforce and Slack will shape the future of enterprise software and transform the way that everyone works in the all-digital work-from-anywhere world. Probably talking just about what's going on right now with the pandemic and everything. A lot of people working from home. There's a huge need for communication. So good statement by Benioff. So the stock for Slack, which opened up at about $38.50, has been a roller coaster since it began. I mean, it's gone up and down. Slack has kind of been all over the place, and trading earlier this year, it went way down earlier this year, trading at about $17 or so in March this year, before climbing back up to $40 in June and then dropping down to about $25 in November. So by acquiring Slack, a business chat service, they have over 130,000 paid customers. This adds massively to the business type suite that Salesforce is already trying to get into, and really broaden the horizons of the software suite that they are able to offer, as Salesforce is in just kind of a really critical point right now where, if you think about the market value that they're already at, it's like a $206 billion market value. Scaling just becomes so much more insane at that level. And now it's time to really talk about how do we implement each area, continually get market share, and continually try to grow. Again, I think they're really aiming for that $500 billion valuation, agreeing with Jim Cramer on that. And so Slack is really good for Salesforce because it has so much connectability, in terms of their enterprise software with other enterprise software. And the bot integration inside of Slack is amazing. I don't know if you've ever seen everyone thinks that Slack is just kind of this chat room kind of thing where it's like, yeah, you have all your individual channels, but it's so much more expansive beyond that. I mean, the whole bot side of it, where you can set up so many different things inside of each Slack channel using things like Zapier, but at the same time, there are also a lot of integrations inside of Slack itself, just to be able to connect up all of these different chat bots and messenger information. Basically, if you look at just the work side of things and the communication side of things, that's where typically a gap always forms between work and between the actual communication happening behind that work. It can be a huge, huge bottleneck. And that's something that Salesforce has always struggled with. And that's where, chatter, sorry, it just didn't help. But what this does is it mends that gap together. It brings together the idea of AI, machine learning bots, and just humans and working together. Now, what I really like about this, and this was really interesting to me, is this continues and it solidifies, honestly, and heats up the ongoing rivalry between Microsoft and Salesforce. Now, Microsoft has something similar to Slack called Teams, and Teams could probably be considered one of the biggest competitors to Slack. So Salesforce and Microsoft, they kind of have a history of competing back with each other, where there was kind of some bad things in the beginning of their history, but then things started to heat around 2000, or started to die down a little bit in 2014 or so. But if we look at the history, we see that there still is some competition. When both companies did try to buy LinkedIn, with Microsoft ultimately winning that battle right there. It's also worth noting that, if I understand correctly, Microsoft also had their eye on Slack. At the same time, it was for a much lower valuation than the one that Salesforce ended up giving them. But to me, it's just important to look at that overall competition that both Microsoft and Salesforce are having there. It seems like Salesforce, because Microsoft has their business suite, where it's like you get the combination of systems that Microsoft and software, enterprise software that Microsoft has created. It seems like Salesforce is trying to get kind of into that business suite route, where we can offer all kinds of services, not just our enterprise CRM service, but how can we integrate that further into people's lives. And a big thing that I needed to talk about when I was listening to Jim Cramer, the way he explained it, which I agree, and this is where what I said in the beginning, where it's like I haven't really thought about Salesforce that much. I've used it before, but it's just not something I've really thought about. It's because Jim Cramer explained, even when he had a company that was using Salesforce, when big or good things happen, people don't see Salesforce. They see the numbers. They don't see the actual company that really caused it all, right? At the end of the day, investors don't necessarily see the company itself. So Salesforce needs a better way to get itself out there and throw itself out in front of the competition, because the reality is that Slack probably did not have the capability to really come at the competition, whereas Salesforce has kind of already been there, and they already have the experience needed in order to scale and help fight against competition. So it honestly, to me, and I agree with Jim there, that it's just a really good combination for both companies to be able to excel in a greater space in the market share. Now, it looks like, from what I can see, that both companies will still remain independent. They both have large bases, and everyone is kind of watching to see, what does this mean? Is there going to be a full integration into Salesforce, or is both companies still going to remain independent? Well, it looks like, from what the CEO of Slack said, that both companies will probably remain independent as to keep their core bases, because those bases are really important. They are, most people that are using Slack are very active with Slack. My agencies and all of my companies use Slack. And so it makes a lot of sense to keep those independent. There might be some sort of value-added integration, but overall, the companies can still grow and work together, at the same time doing the good things that they do. So right now, that's what we know so far. Huge and massive valuation, and ultimately really creates, and again, solidifies. This all comes down, to me, the way I see it, it all comes down to the continual competition of Salesforce and Microsoft. Two butting heads that are each trying to reach a massive, massive valuation, and I can't wait to see what the future beholds, because it seems like Salesforce, they have been on a buying spree for a little while now. I mean, after I did some research, it was like, man, Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, he's been on a huge acquisition spree over the last couple of years, and it just continues on with the biggest acquisition in Salesforce history by buying Slack. And I think, for me, as working mainly on the marketing side, but also just in the e-commerce growth side of it, communication is insanely valuable when it comes to the whole just idea of business growth. Like I said, just combining machines with the work that humans are doing. And I think this is a very long-term play for Salesforce, but at the same time, I can see where this might dramatically change, just the way that Salesforce operates and just the now added value that they can give to their customers to be able to help them in the long term. Now, I don't know a ton of marketing agencies, or I honestly don't know a ton of people that use Salesforce. I mean, if you think about it in the advertising world or in most of the online realm that I can see, it's usually, if you think about most CRMs, it might be something. HubSpot is obviously a huge one. Pipedrive is a huge one for sales teams. Then you have things like Rike, you have Asana. There are a lot of CRMs out there. I personally don't know too many people that use Salesforce, but I know a ton of people that use Slack. A ton of people. Like I said, those bot integrations are amazing. Now, luckily, I don't think anyone will be forced to use Salesforce, but I think it'll be interesting to see the way that the online industry changes to try, if people that were using Slack but not using Salesforce before, how many will begin to integrate over into Salesforce is what will be interesting to me. It's something that I have not necessarily tested, but it is something that interests me and that might encourage me to want to go in and test it. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you found value in it, if you liked it, make sure that you smash that like button down below. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't yet. Thank you guys so much. Until next time.